All right, let's dive into one of the most foundational stories ever told. A journey so epic it has literally defined what a hero is for almost 3,000 years. Homer's Odyssey.
But here's the thing, this is so much more than just an adventure story. At its very heart, it's asking a question that, let's be honest, we've all asked ourselves at some point. What does it actually mean to come home? Is it about a place, a person, or is it about finding yourself again after you've been completely lost?
For our hero, Odysseus, the answer was forged in a brutal 20-year struggle. Think about that for a second. 10 years fighting the Trojan War, and then another 10 years just trying to get back home, fighting against enraged gods, absolutely terrifying monsters, and maybe worst of all, his own despair.
Now, to really understand his journey, we have to start by understanding what he was so desperate to get back to. We're talking about his kingdom, Ithaca, which was completely falling apart without him.
This slide just lays out the stakes perfectly. On one side, you've got the Ithaca Odysseus left behind, a kingdom of order, justice, and strength. But on the other side, the kingdom he's fighting to return to is pure chaos. His own palace is overrun by a pack of arrogant nobles, the suitors, all trying to marry his wife Penelope to steal his throne. They're literally eating him out of house and home, just draining the kingdom's wealth. So this isn't just one man's journey, it's a fight to restore the very soul of a nation.
So let's meet our main players. First, you've got Odysseus, the lost king, the mastermind strategist. Then there's his wife, Penelope, who's an absolute icon of loyalty and intelligence, cleverly keeping those suitors at bay. We have their son, Telemachus, who has to go from being a boy to a man to help save his family. And of course the suitors, the villains of the piece, who pretty much represent total greed and the breakdown of society.
Okay, now we're getting into the core ideas, the stuff that makes this adventure a true philosophical masterpiece. It's not just about what happens, but why it happens and what it all really means. What's so amazing is the structure of the story itself. The whole backstory covers 20 long years, right? But Homer, like a master filmmaker, focuses the main action of the poem into just 40 incredibly intense days. You can see it on this timeline. He weaves together the father's final, desperate push for home with the son's own search. It's just a brilliant way to build tension.
And at the heart of this whole thing is a super important Greek concept, nostos. Now, this is where we get our modern word nostalgia, but, and this is key, for the Greeks, nostos wasn't some warm, fuzzy feeling. No way. It was a painful, heroic, and often deadly struggle to get back home and, in doing so, reclaim who you are.
And this right here is a perfect, just gut-wrenching example of what nostos really feels like. So Odysseus has finally escaped the goddess Calypso. He's on a raft he built with his own 2 hands, and he can actually see his homeland on the horizon. But the sea god Poseidon, who hates his guts, spots him and unleashes this unbelievable storm that just rips his raft to pieces. The description is just, wow, you can feel the cold spray, the splintering wood, the absolute desperation of one man against the rage of a god. That right there is nostos.
Okay, the second big idea you have to understand is xenia. This was the sacred Greek law of hospitality. Back then, how you treated a stranger who showed up at your door, whether they were friend or foe, was a direct measure of your character. It was a sacred duty, and Zeus himself was watching. Get it right, you could be blessed. Get it wrong, and you could expect divine punishment.
And really, the whole epic is a giant test of Husinia. You've got your good hosts, like the Phaeacians, who find Odysseus shipwrecked and give him shelter, gifts, and a ride home. Or there's the humble swineherd Eumaeus, whose loyalty just shines. And then you've got the bad hosts. The suitors are the ultimate bad guests, right? They're devouring another man's wealth and even plotting to murder his son. And of course, the monstrous Cyclops, who doesn't just welcome his guests, he traps and eats them. In the world of the Odyssey, your approach to hospitality is what separates a civilized person from a monster.
And this is where it all comes together so beautifully. When Odysseus finally makes it back to Ithaca, he doesn't just charge in. No. Guided by the goddess Athena, he puts on a disguise. He becomes a poor old beggar. And this disguise is his ultimate tool. It lets him walk through his own palace, completely unseen, so he can test everyone. Who's been loyal and who's a traitor. It's such a powerful statement about identity. A true king is defined by his character, not his crown.
And this all leads us to the brilliant climax, where 20 years of pain, patience, and pure cunning finally explode into one of the most famous showdowns in all of literature.
So, the clever Penelope announces a challenge. Whoever can string her husband's enormous bow and shoot an arrow clean through 12 axe heads gets to marry her. The suitors, brimming with arrogance, all try and fail miserably. They can't even bend the bow. Then, the beggar, the old man everyone's been mocking, asks for a turn. They all laugh, but he picks it up, strings it as easily as a musician strings a lyre, and fires a perfect shot. In that one stunning moment, the beggar vanishes, and the king is back.
What happens next is not a debate. It's a reckoning. Odysseus gives the signal, the doors are locked, and he, his son Telemachus, and 2 loyal servants unleash absolute fury on over 100 stunned suitors. It is brutal, it is bloody, and it is decisive. This isn't just personal revenge. It's the violent, necessary restoration of order and justice to a kingdom on the brink of collapse.
So the battle is won, but the story still isn't over, because Penelope, after 20 years of false hopes and dashed dreams, is nobody's fool. She decides to test the stranger who claims to be her husband. She casually tells a servant to move their marriage bed out into the hall. And that's when Odysseus explodes. He gets furious, shouting that the bed can't be moved because he built it himself from a living olive tree still rooted in the ground. It was their secret. And with those words, Penelope knows her husband is finally home.
So the bad guys are gone, the kingdom is restored, but the story's influence was just getting started. How did this ancient tale become such a massive cornerstone of our entire culture?
I think this quote just nails it. It speaks to something so universal. We all have our own battles to fight, right? Our own personal Troys to conquer. And we all have that deep sense of Ithaca, that place of peace and belonging that we're all striving to get back to.
I mean, the Odyssey's fingerprint is everywhere. It basically gave us the blueprint for the hero's journey that we see in everything from Star Wars to Harry Potter. Thinkers like Jean Giraudoux have analyzed it for centuries, and Odysseus himself became this timeless symbol for human resilience, for cunning, and for that endless search for home. It's not just an old story, it's a living one we keep retelling.
So this brings us to the big question. Why? Why does a 3,000-year-old story about a king fighting a Cyclops and angry sea gods still matter so much to us today?
Look at this number. For nearly 3,000 years, this epic has grabbed hold of audiences and not let go. A story doesn't last that long by accident. It has to be tapping into something absolutely essential about what it means to be human. And that's the real secret. The Odyssey isn't really about a man sailing across the Mediterranean. It's about all of us, navigating the choppy waters of our own lives. The monsters, the sirens, the Cyclops, they're incredible metaphors for the temptations and obstacles we all have to face, both the ones out there in the world and the ones deep inside ourselves.
In the end, the Odyssey lasts because its lessons are just as true today as they were 3 millennia ago. It teaches us about resilience. It teaches us about the real meaning of home. It shows us that our actions have consequences. And maybe most importantly, it reminds us that true wisdom is almost always earned through suffering.
So I'll leave you with this thought to chew on. Odysseus' journey was huge and epic, but that fundamental desire to get back to a place where you feel whole, where you belong, that's universal. So ask yourself, in the great journey of your own life, what is the Ithaca you are struggling to return to?